The beer bottle shattered against the wall 3 inches from her face. Elena Graves stood frozen behind the bar counter at Anchor's End, a dive establishment 2 blocks from the Virginia Beach oceanfront, where the paint peeled like sunburned skin and the air tasted of salt and stale cigarettes. Glass shards exploded across her white cotton shirt. Cheap whiskey dripped down her left cheek like tears she refused to shed. Her hands, small and calloused from 2 years of gripping bottlenecks and wiping down sticky counters, trembled slightly at her sides. She did not cry. She had learned long ago that tears were a luxury she could not afford. The man who threw the bottle stood 6 feet 4 inches tall and weighed somewhere north of 230 pounds, all of it muscle wrapped in sun-damaged skin and faded tattoos. Dalton Kane, 28 years old. Navy SEAL Team 3 recently returned from a deployment in Syria that had lasted 9 months and cost him 2 teammates whose names he would never say aloud in public, but whispered sometimes in his sleep. His right forearm bore the trident emblem, the gold wings and anchor and pistol that marked him as one of America's most elite warriors. His left forearm bore the scars of shrapnel from an IED outside Raqqa. He was laughing now, a sound like gravel in a garbage disposal, and his 4 teammates joined in their voices, filling the cramped interior of Anchor's End like a pack of wolves circling wounded prey. "Clean it up, sweetheart," Dalton sneered, slamming another empty glass on the scarred wooden counter hard enough that the sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. "That's what you're good for, right? Cleaning up after real warriors." Elena said nothing. She had learned that silence was sometimes the only defense. She grabbed the gray rag from her apron pocket, the same apron she had worn for 7 shifts in a row, because the laundromat charged $3 per load and she was trying to make rent by the 15th. She got down on her knees, feeling the bite of broken glass through her jeans, and started picking up the shards one by one. Her hands still trembled. Not from fear, from something else entirely. Something she was fighting very hard to suppress. One of the other SEALs, younger than Dalton, cockier, with a fresh tattoo of an American flag across his chest that still looked raw and angry, leaned over the bar and grabbed a fistful of Elena's dark brown ponytail. He yanked her head back, so she was forced to look up at him, her gray eyes meeting his blue ones for exactly 2 seconds before her training kicked in and she lowered her gaze. Never maintain eye contact longer than necessary. It reads as challenge. Challenge invites escalation. "Hey, I'm talking to you, Mouse," the younger SEAL said, his breath reeking of bourbon and poor dental hygiene. "You deaf or just stupid?" The bar went quiet, not because anyone was going to help her. The 11 other patrons in Anchor's End at 9:47 on this Thursday night in early December had seen this scene play out before, or variations of it, and they had long ago learned that intervention was neither welcome nor safe. They went quiet because they wanted to watch, because there was something primal and satisfying about watching someone smaller and weaker get put in their place. Elena's jaw tightened. Her eyes, pale gray like winter fog over the Atlantic, remained locked on the younger SEAL's face for exactly 2 more seconds. She cataloged everything in those seconds. The dilation of his pupils, the slight uptick at the corner of his mouth that indicated pleasure rather than genuine aggression. The way his grip on her hair was tight, but not tight enough to cause real pain because he wanted compliance, not combat. Then she looked away, letting the tension drain from her shoulders, and he released her hair with a satisfied grunt. "That's what I thought," he said. "Pathetic." The group erupted in laughter again, already signaling for another round, already forgetting the quiet bartender they had just humiliated because she was not worth remembering. She was furniture, wallpaper, background noise. But Elena Graves was not forgetting anything. She was remembering everything. Every face, every voice, every word. And most importantly, she was listening to a conversation happening in the corner booth 10 feet behind Dalton Kane's broad shoulders, a conversation none of these SEALs had noticed, a conversation that had been unfolding for exactly 47 minutes. A conversation that was going to change everything. To everyone in Anchor's End that night, Elena Graves was nobody. 26 years old, no family, no connections, no future. Just another quiet girl pulling beer taps for $7.50 an hour, hoping to scrape together enough money to pay the $850 rent on a studio apartment that smelled like mildew and had a radiator that only worked on Tuesdays. She lived alone. She spoke to almost no one outside of work. The other bartender, a 53-year-old woman named Deb with bleached hair and 3 ex-husbands, had tried to befriend her once and given up after 2 weeks of monosyllabic responses. "You're like a ghost," Deb had said. "Here, but not here." Elena had not corrected her. Being a ghost was exactly what she wanted. She stood now, glass shards collected in the rag, and moved behind the counter to the trash bin. She kept her head down, her shoulders rounded, her movements small and unthreatening. Classic submissive body language. The kind of posture that made men like Dalton Kane feel powerful and women like her feel invisible. But while her body language screamed weakness, her mind was running calculations at a speed that would have impressed a supercomputer. Target and corner booth male, approximately 43 years old, 6 feet, even 185 pounds. Expensive watch Rolex Submariner retail value at approximately $32,000. Far too expensive for someone on a military salary. Clothing tailored charcoal suit and Italian leather shoes, no visible jewelry except the watch. Hair gray at the temples, military cut but grown out slightly, indicating recent transition from active duty to civilian life or retirement. Body language confident but controlled. Shoulders back, spine straight, hands visible on the table at all times except when reaching for his drink, which he had been nursing for 53 minutes. Classic counter-surveillance posture. The man across from him, male approximately 38 years old, 5 feet 11 inches, 200 pounds, Eastern European facial structure, expensive but understated clothing. Accent when he spoke, Russian Moscow region educated. Watch Omega Seamaster. Phone kept face down on the table, checked exactly every 11 minutes, with the screen tilted away from potential observers. Elena had been tracking them since they sat down at 9 o'clock. She poured another round of bourbon for Dalton's crew. Her hands steady now, her face a mask of pleasant nothing. She set the glasses down without making eye contact, collected the cash Dalton threw at her without counting it, knowing it would be exactly enough to cover the drinks with no tip, because men like Dalton Kane did not tip women they did not respect. And while she poured and served and smiled her empty smile, she was reading lips. The man in the corner booth, the one with the expensive watch and the military bearing, was named Commander Marcus Caldwell. Elena had not known his name 3 weeks ago when he first appeared at Anchor's End. She had learned it by watching him sign his credit card receipt in week 2, her eyes trained enough to read upside-down text from 12 feet away. Commander Marcus Caldwell, United States Navy, Naval Special Warfare Command Liaison. 43 years old, decorated career spanning 21 years. Current assignment intelligence coordination between SEAL teams and Pentagon strategic operations. And for the past 47 minutes, Commander Marcus Caldwell had been selling his country to the man across from him. Elena moved to wipe down the bar, her rag making slow circles on the wood, her eyes on her work, her peripheral vision locked on the corner booth. Caldwell's lips were moving. She had a direct line of sight. The lighting was poor, but adequate. The distance was manageable. SEAL Team 6 Caldwell was saying, his lips forming the words with crisp military precision. Kandahar region, exfiltration routes through the mountain passes. The Russian's response was too quiet, his lips barely moving, but Elena caught the next exchange. 2 million, Caldwell said. Half now, half on delivery. Elena's hand paused on the bar for exactly 1 second. Then she resumed wiping. Her expression did not change. But inside her chest, her heart rate had just spiked from 68 beats per minute to 94. $2 million. For classified special operations intelligence. For the lives of American soldiers. She moved to the sink, began washing glasses, her back to the room now, but her ears tracking the sounds behind her. Dalton and his crew were getting louder, drunker, more aggressive. The jukebox in the corner was playing something by Creedence Clearwater Revival. 2 construction workers at the pool table were arguing about a scratch. The bathroom door opened and closed. Ordinary sounds, white noise. But underneath it all, Elena could hear the low murmur of treason. This was not the first time she had listened to men reveal their secrets without knowing they were being observed. For 6 years of her life, listening had been her job, her specialty, her reason for existing. The memories came now, unwanted but unavoidable, triggered by the familiar rush of adrenaline and the old muscle memory of operational awareness. 9 years ago, Elena had been 17 years old, living in her 4th foster home in Norfolk, Virginia, sleeping in a room she shared with two other girls and counting the days until she aged out of the system. She had no family. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 8, leaving behind no relatives willing to take in an orphan child and not enough life insurance to make foster care lucrative. She had bounced between homes, between schools, between caseworkers who looked at her fall and saw nothing special. Just another kid who would probably end up working retail or getting pregnant or both. She had been sitting in the group home common room reading a library book about World War II code breakers when the man in the gray suit walked in. His name was Thomas Langley. He worked for an agency he did not name, but which Elena would later learn was the Central Intelligence Agency, Directorate of Operations Special Activities Division. He was 52 years old, slim and average-looking, in the way that professional intelligence officers cultivated average, looks like gardeners cultivated roses. He sat down across from her without asking permission and placed a manila folder on the coffee table between them. "You read lips," he had said. Not a question, a statement. Elena had stared at him. She had not told anyone about that particular skill, the one she had taught herself by watching movies with the sound off and then checking her accuracy with subtitles. It was just something she did, a game, a way to pass time. You scored in the 97th percentile on spatial reasoning. Langley continued opening the folder, now revealing pages that appeared to be her school records, her medical records, her entire life reduced to bureaucratic documentation. 99th percentile on pattern recognition. You have an eidetic memory for faces and an innate ability to analyze behavioral cues. You taught yourself Russian from library books because you were bored. He looked up from the folder, his eyes meeting hers, and for the first time in her life, Elena felt like someone was actually seeing her. "How would you like to disappear?" he asked, "and become someone useful?" For the next 6 years, Elena trained in places that officially did not exist. Fort Bragg's Black Site facilities, a compound outside Williamsburg that had no name and no address. Rooms with two-way mirrors and instructors who never gave their real names. She learned to read lips in 7 languages. She learned to identify lies by watching the dilation of pupils, the twitch of fingers, the rhythm of breathing. She learned behavioral analysis, microexpression, interpretation, linguistic pattern, recognition. She learned to hear conversations across crowded rooms. She learned to become invisible while standing in plain sight. She became what the agency called a ghost listener, an operative who could extract information without anyone knowing they were being observed. A human surveillance device. At 23, she was deployed to Prague. Her cover was university student. Her mission was to identify Russian intelligence assets embedded in NATO operations. For 14 months, she worked alone, living in a small apartment in the old city, attending classes she did not need, sitting in cafes and bars and restaurants, listening to conversations that were supposed to be private. She identified 3 moles, one in the Czech Ministry of Defense, one in the German embassy, one in a private military contractor that serviced NATO logistics. The operation was considered a success. Elena was considered exceptional. Her handler, Thomas Langley, submitted her name for commendation. And then on a cold February night in 2023, everything fell apart. The mission had been routine, a meet with her extraction team in a warehouse district outside Prague. She arrived at the rendezvous point at exactly 2300 hours as instructed. Her partner, a field operative named Michael Kincaid, was supposed to be there. Instead, there were 6 men with automatic weapons. Someone had betrayed their location. Someone had sold them out. Michael Kincaid died covering her escape. 3 bullets, center mass. He had pushed her toward the window toward survival and then turned back to buy her time with his life. Elena had run through the warehouse, through the alley, through streets she had memorized for exactly this scenario. She made it to the safe house. She made it to the exfiltration point. She made it out of Prague with a bullet wound in her left shoulder and a trauma that would scar deeper than any physical injury. The CIA extracted her, patched her up in a black site medical facility somewhere in Germany. And then Thomas Langley, her recruiter, her handler, the man who had promised to make her useful, sat down across from her in a sterile white room and said the words that would define the rest of her life. "You're compromised. The operation is burned. We're giving you $10,000 in a new identity. Disappear. Don't contact us. Don't try to come back. As far as the agency is concerned, you never existed." No pension, no protection, no acknowledgement, just a new name, a new social security number, and a Greyhound bus ticket to Virginia Beach. She had been 24 years old. She had given 6 years of her life to her country. She had identified threats and saved lives and done everything asked of her. And when the operation went wrong, when someone in the system betrayed her, the system had thrown her away like defective equipment. For 2 years, Elena had tried to forget. She found the cheapest apartment she could afford. She found the worst job she could tolerate, a job where no one asked questions and no one expected anything. She cut off contact with every person she had known in her old life, which was easy because there were not many people to cut off. She stopped looking over her shoulder, stopped analyzing body language, stopped reading lips. She tried to be normal. She tried to heal, but old instincts never die. They just wait, dormant, patient, ready to wake at the first sign of danger. And tonight those instincts were screaming. Elena finished washing the glasses and dried her hands on her apron. She glanced at the clock above the bar. 10 o'clock. Anchor's End closed at 2 in the morning. 4 more hours of Dalton Kane and his crew. 4 more hours of harassment. 4 more hours of being invisible. But right now she needed to focus, because Commander Marcus Caldwell was reaching into his jacket pocket. Elena moved to refill the peanut bowls along the bar, a task that brought her 3 feet closer to the corner booth. She kept her eyes down, her movements slow and non-threatening. Just another bartender doing her job. Caldwell pulled out a piece of paper. He unfolded it on the table. Even from this distance, even in the poor light, Elena could see that it was a map. Geographic contour lines, grid coordinates, the kind of tactical map used for military operations. The Russian leaned forward, studying it. His lips moved, forming Russian words. Elena caught 3 of them: submarine, patrol, and Pacific. Her blood went cold. This was not just tactical intelligence about troop movements. This was strategic intelligence about naval operations, about submarines, about the kind of information that in the wrong hands could shift the balance of power in contested waters. This was bigger than she had thought, bigger than SEAL team deployments. This was the kind of treason that started wars. Elena's hands began to shake again. She gripped the edge of the peanut bowl to steady them. She needed to think. She needed to decide. Because standing in this bar, watching a decorated naval officer sell American secrets to a Russian intelligence operative, Elena Graves was faced with a choice that would define everything that came next. She could walk away. She could finish her shift. She could go home to her studio apartment and pretend she had seen nothing. She had earned the right to walk away. The CIA had made it clear she did not owe them anything anymore. She did not owe anyone anything. But there were SEALs in this bar, young men like Dalton Kane who were idiots and assholes but who put their lives on the line for their country. There were soldiers deployed overseas right now whose lives depended on operational security. There were families back home who would never know why their sons and daughters did not come home if someone like Marcus Caldwell kept selling intelligence to the enemy. Michael Kincaid had died for this work. He had died because someone betrayed him. Someone like Caldwell, someone who valued money more than loyalty, more than honor, more than the lives they were trusted to protect. Elena set down the peanut bowl. She moved back behind the bar. She pulled out her phone, the cheap prepaid model she had bought at a gas station for $39, and she opened the camera app. She angled it carefully, using her body to block the motion from casual observation, and she pressed record. 30 seconds. That was all she needed. Just 30 seconds of clear footage showing Caldwell and the Russian with the map, with whatever was about to be exchanged. But then Dalton Kane slammed his palm on the counter, the sound like a crack of thunder, making Elena flinch hard enough that her phone nearly fell from her hand. "Hey, Mouse!" Dalton's voice cut through her concentration like a chainsaw. "Another round! You deaf!" The noise drew attention. 3 other patrons looked up. The construction workers at the pool table turned. And in the corner booth, Commander Marcus Caldwell raised his head and looked directly at Elena. For a fraction of a second, something flickered across his face. Not quite recognition, not quite alarm, but calculation, assessment, the look of a trained operative evaluating a potential threat. His eyes swept the room, landed on her phone still in her hand, angled slightly toward his booth, landed on her face, studied her posture, her expression, the tension in her shoulders. And Elena saw the exact moment when he understood. He knew. He knew she was not just a bartender. He knew she was watching. He knew she was listening. Whatever training he had, whatever operational experience made him Commander Marcus Caldwell instead of just another Navy officer, it was screaming at him right now that the quiet girl behind the bar was a threat. The next 3 seconds happened in slow motion, the way traumatic moments always do. The brain is stretching time to capture every detail, because survival depends on those details. The Russian reached inside his jacket. The motion was smooth, practiced the movement of someone who had drawn weapons from concealment many times before. Commander Marcus Caldwell stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor, his hand moving to his own jacket. The SEALs at the bar, finally sensing that something was wrong, turned toward the booth, their bodies shifting into combat-ready positions, driven by years of training and deployment instinct. And Elena Graves made a decision that would change everything. She vaulted over the bar counter in one fluid motion, grabbed the nearest beer bottle from Dalton's table and hurled it directly at the overhead light fixture above the corner booth. The bottle connected with the bulb. Glass exploded. The light died. The corner of Anchor's End plunged into shadow, and in that shadow, Elena moved. Low, fast, silent. The way she had been trained to move in rooms where lives depended on not being seen. She closed the distance to the booth in under 2 seconds, sliding beneath the table, her body remembering the muscle patterns, even though her conscious mind had tried to forget them. She came up behind the Russian just as he pulled a compact Makarov pistol from his jacket, the weapon clearing leather, but not yet raised to firing position. Elena's elbow connected with his throat, hard, precise, crushing the cricoid cartilage just enough to disrupt his breathing without causing permanent damage. The Russian dropped his weapon, clattering to the floor, his hands going to his neck as he gagged and wheezed. Commander Caldwell tried to run. He made it exactly 4 steps before Elena swept his legs from behind, using a low kick to the back of his knees that sent him crashing into an adjacent table. Before he could recover, before he could reach for whatever weapon he was carrying, Elena was on top of him, her knee pinning his chest, her hand twisting his right arm up behind his back in a joint lock that would dislocate his shoulder if he struggled. "Don't move," she said quietly. Her voice was steady. Her hands were steady. Everything about her was steady because this finally was the work she had been built for. "Don't even breathe wrong." The bar lights flickered back on. Somebody had found the breaker. 20 people stood frozen, staring at the quiet bartender who had just incapacitated 2 armed men in under 10 seconds. Dalton Kane was standing 3 feet away from her, his mouth hanging open, his bourbon forgotten in his hand. Behind him, his 4 teammates had drawn their own sidearms, SEAL training overriding alcohol, but they did not know where to aim because they did not know who the threat was. Elena did not look at them. She was too busy securing the map that had fallen from Caldwell's jacket. She grabbed it with her free hand, the one not controlling Caldwell's arm, and she shoved it into her own pocket. Then she reached for the Russian's fallen weapon, securing it before anyone else could. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. Probably Deb, the other bartender, who was standing behind the bar with her phone in her hand and an expression of absolute shock on her face. But it was not the police who arrived first. It was a dark blue Ford F-150 pickup truck, 15 years old but meticulously maintained, that pulled up outside Anchor's End exactly 97 seconds after Elena had thrown the bottle. The driver did not turn off the engine. He simply opened the passenger door from the inside and waited. Elena looked at the truck. She looked at Caldwell, still pinned beneath her knee. She looked at the Russian, still gasping on the floor. She looked at Dalton Kane, who was staring at her like he had just seen a ghost, which in a way he had. Elena stood releasing Caldwell but keeping the Makarov pistol pointed at him. She backed toward the door, her movements controlled her eyes, tracking every person in the room for signs of threat. Caldwell was not moving. The Russian was not moving. Dalton and his team were not moving. Everyone in Anchor's End had frozen, caught in the moment between violence and its aftermath. Elena reached the door. She holstered the Makarov in her waistband, hidden beneath her shirt, and she ran to the truck. She threw herself into the passenger seat. The driver accelerated before she had fully closed the door, the truck lurching away from Anchor's End with the deliberate speed of someone who knew exactly how fast to drive to avoid attention while still covering distance. Elena turned to look at the driver. He was an older man, 67 years old, with silver hair, cut military short, and a face lined with the kind of wrinkles that came from decades of hard decisions and harder consequences. He was wearing jeans and a faded Marine Corps sweatshirt. His hands on the steering wheel were steady. She had never seen him before in her life, but somehow impossibly he said her name, her real name, the name she had not used in 2 years. "Hello, Elena," Colonel Garrett Ashford said. "We need to talk." Elena's hand was already on the door handle, her body coiled to roll out of the moving truck if necessary, training overriding exhaustion. "Stop the vehicle. Now." Colonel Garrett Ashford did not slow down. He took a left turn onto Atlantic Avenue, merging smoothly into late-night traffic, maintaining exactly 5 miles above the speed limit. Not fast enough to draw attention, not slow enough to look suspicious. "If I wanted you dead, Elena, you would have died 2 years ago in Prague." His voice was calm, matter-of-fact, the tone of a man who had delivered hard truths to young soldiers for 4 decades. "I am not your enemy, though I understand why you might think otherwise. You know my burned name. You know where I work. You were waiting outside that bar at exactly the right moment." Elena's voice was level controlled, but her hand had not moved from the door handle. "That makes you either CIA surveillance or enemy intelligence. Either way, I'm getting out of this truck." "I am neither. I am the man who found you in that group home in Norfolk 9 years ago. I am the man who identified your potential and recommended you for the Ghost Listener program." Ashford glanced at her briefly, then returned his eyes to the road. "I am also the man who got pushed out when Thomas Langley took credit for recruiting you and used my work to build his own career." Elena said nothing. She was running facial recognition in her head, matching this man's features against every face she had memorized during her 6 years of training and 2 years of operations. Nothing. No matches. No recognition. "You do not remember me," Ashford continued, "because I never met you directly. I was not supposed to. I was background. Research. The intelligence officer who reads files and writes reports and makes recommendations. Langley was the field operative who did the recruiting, took the glory, and eventually took everything else." The truck turned again, leaving the commercial district, heading into a residential neighborhood where the houses were small and old, and the street lights cast pools of amber light every 30 yards. Elena was tracking their route, automatically building a mental map counting exit options. "Why should I believe you?" "Because 2 minutes ago you exposed a senior naval intelligence officer committing treason, and in approximately 4 minutes the FBI is going to arrive at Anchor's End and start asking questions you cannot answer." Ashford pulled the truck into the driveway of a modest single-story house with beige siding and a chain-link fence. He turned off the engine. "You can get out right now, run, and spend the next 6 months looking over your shoulder while Caldwell's network tries to eliminate you. Or you can come inside, let me treat that wound in your side that you think I have not noticed, and listen to what I have to say." Elena looked down. Blood was seeping through her shirt just above her left hip, a dark stain spreading across the white cotton. She had not felt it happen. Probably the Russian's knife, a quick slash when she took him down shallow enough that adrenaline masked the pain. She pressed her hand against it. The bleeding was not arterial, not immediately dangerous, but it needed attention. She looked at Ashford. His hands were visible, resting on the steering wheel. No weapons drawn, no aggressive posture. He was waiting patient like a fisherman who had cast his line and knew that pulling too hard would break it. 5 minutes, Elena said. "You talk, I listen. If I do not like what I hear, I leave." Fair enough. The house was exactly what Elena expected. Neat, spare, military precise. The living room contained a worn leather couch, a coffee table with nothing on it except a single coaster, and built-in bookshelves lined with military history texts and intelligence manuals. On one wall hung a framed photograph of a Marine Corps platoon, young men in desert camouflage circa 1980. On another wall, a shadow box displaying medals Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Legion of Merit. Ashford gestured to the couch. "Sit, I will get the medical kit." Elena remained standing, her back to the wall, her eyes tracking Ashford as he moved to a closet and retrieved a tackle box that had been converted into a comprehensive trauma kit. He set it on the coffee table, opened it to reveal field dressings, antiseptic sutures, and enough supplies to handle anything short of major surgery. "Lift your shirt." Elena hesitated, then complied. The wound was a 3-inch slash just above her hip, still bleeding but clotting. Ashford examined it with practiced efficiency, his movements clinical and detached. Not deep. You were lucky. He cleaned it with antiseptic, the sting cutting through Elena's adrenaline fog. Or you moved at exactly the right moment. I suspect the latter. He applied butterfly closures, then covered the wound with gauze and medical tape. The entire process took 90 seconds. Elena lowered her shirt. You said you were pushed out when Langley took credit for recruiting me. Explain. Ashford closed the medical kit and sat down in a wooden chair across from her, maintaining distance, maintaining non-threatening body language. In 2016, I was a lieutenant colonel assigned to Marine Intelligence. My job was to identify potential assets for unconventional operations. I spent 3 months reviewing foster care records across 5 states looking for a specific profile: high intelligence, low social ties, trainability. You were the best candidate I found in 2 years of searching. He leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped between his knees. I wrote a 40-page recruitment assessment. I submitted it through channels. And then Thomas Langley, who was my superior officer at the time, took my report, put his name on it, and personally recruited you. He got the commendation, he got the promotion, and I got reassigned to a desk job in Quantico where I could not interfere with his operation. Why did you not fight it? Because the system does not reward the man who complains about stolen credit. It rewards the man who knows how to work the system. Ashford's voice was bitter, the first genuine emotion Elena had heard from him. And because Langley had friends in places I did not. So I kept my head down, I took my reassignment, and I waited. Waited for what? For Langley to make a mistake. For evidence. For proof of what I suspected from the moment he pushed me out, which was that Thomas Langley was not building a ghost listener program to serve his country. He was building it to serve himself. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. Prague. Prague, Ashford confirmed. I had no operational role by then. I was retired, but I still had contacts, friends who owed me favors. And when I heard that a ghost listener operation in Prague had been compromised, that an operative named Michael Kincaid had been killed, and another operative had barely escaped, I started digging. He stood, moved to the bookshelf, and retrieved a folder. Not a manila folder like the CIA used, a simple black binder with no markings. He set it on the coffee table in front of Elena. 18 months of research, financial records that should not exist, communication logs that were supposed to be classified, witness statements from assets I contacted personally. Ashford opened the binder to the first page. Thomas Langley has been selling intelligence for 4 years. He compromised the Prague operation deliberately. He fed your location to Russian intelligence because you and Michael Kincaid were getting too close to discovering his network. Elena stared at the documents. Bank transfers, encrypted communications, photographs of Langley meeting with known foreign intelligence operatives. The evidence was comprehensive, methodical, and damning. Michael died because of him, she said quietly. Yes, and you did nothing. I did everything I could. Ashford's voice was hard now. I submitted this evidence to the FBI, to the CIA Inspector General, to 3 different congressional oversight committees. And every time the investigation went nowhere. Langley has protectors, people who benefit from his network, people who bury investigations before they start. Elena closed the binder. Her hands were shaking again, but this time from rage, not fear. Then why tell me, why bring me here, if the system will not touch him? What can I possibly do? You can do what I cannot. Ashford met her eyes, and for the first time Elena saw the weight of guilt in his expression. I am an old man with no official standing. I have evidence but no authority. But you, Elena Graves, are a ghost listener who just exposed Commander Marcus Caldwell in the middle of a bar full of witnesses. You have just proven you are still operational, still capable, still willing to act. Caldwell works for Langley. It was not a question. Elena already knew the answer. The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Caldwell is one of 3 senior military officers Langley recruited to his network. They feed him classified intelligence. He brokers it to the highest bidder, Russia, China, sometimes even private military contractors who resell it for profit. Ashford pulled out another document, this one showing organizational charts. Caldwell's specialty is naval operations. The intelligence you saw him passing tonight, the submarine patrol routes, those are worth millions on the black market. And more importantly, they are worth American lives. Elena began pacing her mind, racing through implications and possibilities. The FBI will arrest Caldwell. He will talk eventually. He will give up Langley. No, he will not, because Langley will have him killed before he talks, probably within 48 hours, maybe sooner. Ashford's voice was grim, and then the investigation dies with him, and Langley walks away clean, and the network keeps operating. Then what do you want from me? I want you to finish what you started. I want you to gather evidence that cannot be buried, evidence that ties Langley directly to Caldwell, to the Russian operative, to the entire network. Evidence so comprehensive and so public that even his protectors cannot save him. Ashford stood as well, facing her across the small living room. I cannot do this, Elena. I tried. I failed. But you are still a ghost listener. You can still get close. You can still listen. And with the right support, you can expose the man who killed your partner and betrayed your country. Elena stopped pacing. She turned to face Ashford fully. You are asking me to go operational again. I am asking you to finish your mission, the one that got Michael killed, the one you have been running from for 2 years. I am not running. The words came out sharper than Elena intended. I am surviving. There is a difference. Is there? Ashford's voice softened. Because from where I stand, it looks like Thomas Langley took everything from you. Your career, your partner, your future. And now he is sitting in an office in Langley, Virginia, collecting a government paycheck while he sells American lives for profit. If that is not worth fighting, I do not know what is. Elena was silent for a long moment. Outside, a car passed its headlights, sweeping across the living room window. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Normal sounds, the sounds of a world that kept turning no matter how many people died in the dark. What if I fail again, Elena said finally. What if more people die because I missed something, because my judgment is compromised? Ashford walked to the bookshelf, pulled down a small wooden box and opened it. Inside were challenge coins, dozens of them, from every unit he had served with over 4 decades. He selected one, a simple bronze disc with the Marine Corps emblem, and held it out to Elena. In 1991, I was a captain in the 1st Marine Division during Desert Storm. We were pushing into Iraq and my unit got separated from our battalion. For 18 hours, I made decisions that kept my men alive. And for 18 hours, I was certain I was making the wrong calls. I was terrified. I was second-guessing every choice. But I kept making decisions anyway, because that is what leaders do. We act despite the fear. He pressed the coin into her hand and, you are not broken, Elena. You are wounded. There is a difference. Broken things cannot be fixed. Wounded things heal. And sometimes the best way to heal is to finish what you started. Elena looked down at the coin. It was warm from his hand's solid reel. She closed her fist around it. If I do this, I do it my way. Not the CIA's way, not Langley's way, mine. I would not have it any other way. And you stay in the background. Overwatch. Intelligence support. But you do not go operational. This is my operation. Agreed. Elena took a deep breath. Then I need to know everything. Every detail you have on Caldwell, on Langley, on the network. And I need a plan. Ashford smiled for the first time, a tired smile that made him look older than his 67 years. Come into the kitchen. We have a long night ahead of us. The kitchen table became their operations center. Ashford spread out files, photographs, financial records, communication intercepts. For the next 3 hours, he walked Elena through everything he had learned in 18 months of investigation. Thomas Langley had started small. Low-level tactical intelligence, troop movements, equipment manifests, nothing that would trigger major investigations, but enough to build relationships with foreign buyers. Over time, he had expanded. He recruited 3 military officers, each with access to different types of classified intelligence. Commander Marcus Caldwell handled naval operations. A colonel in the Army's 10th Special Forces Group provided intelligence on counterterrorism operations in the Middle East. A civilian contractor at the Defense Intelligence Agency gave him access to satellite imagery and signals intelligence. The buyers were diverse. Russian military intelligence, Chinese Ministry of State Security, Iranian Revolutionary Guard, even private military contractors who resold the intelligence to warlords and criminal organizations. Langley did not care about ideology, he cared about money. His operational security is excellent, Ashford explained, pointing to a communication log. He uses cutouts, dead drops, encrypted communications that change every operation. I have evidence of his network, but nothing that directly ties him to specific transactions. Nothing that would stand up in court. Then we need to catch him in the act, Elena said. A direct handoff. Him to Caldwell, or him to a foreign buyer, which is nearly impossible. Langley almost never meets his assets in person. He is too careful. Then we make him careless. We force his hand. Elena stood moved to the window, stared out at the dark street. An idea was forming, dangerous and audacious, but it might work. Caldwell is in FBI custody now. Within hours, Langley will know. He will panic. He will want to assess the damage figure, out what Caldwell might reveal, decide whether to cut his losses or try to silence him. That panic creates opportunity. She turned back to Ashford. I need to return to Anchor's End tomorrow. I need to act like nothing happened. Like I am just a bartender who got lucky stopping a bar fight. The FBI will interview me. I give them the truth, but only part of it. I saw two men fighting. I intervened. I did not know who they were or what they were doing. They will not believe you, Ashford said. Your takedown was too professional, too precise. They will believe I was a victim who fought back. Self-defense training. Maybe I took some classes after a bad experience. It is plausible. Barely. But all I need is 48 hours before they start digging deeper into my background. And what happens in those 48 hours? Langley will reach out to Caldwell's network. He will try to clean up the mess. And when he does, I will be listening. Ashford studied her for a long moment. That is a very thin plan. It is the only plan we have. Over the next 6 hours, they refined the strategy. Ashford would provide surveillance support monitoring FBI communications to track the investigation's progress. He would also reach out to his remaining contacts in military intelligence, building a secondary evidence package that could corroborate whatever Elena uncovered. Elena would return to her life, cover her role as the invisible bartender. But this time she would be hunting. At 7 in the morning, Ashford drove her back to within 2 blocks of her apartment. Before she got out of the truck, he handed her a prepaid cell phone. My number is the only one programmed in. If you need extraction call, if you need backup call, if you just need someone to confirm you are not crazy, call. Elena took the phone. Why are you doing this? Really, it is not just about Langley. It is not just about the evidence. Ashford was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because I put you in that system. I identified you. I recommended you. And when Langley betrayed you, I did nothing. I watched a young woman get burned, abandoned, and thrown away, and I told myself I was being strategic, that I was waiting for the right moment to act. But the truth is I was a coward. He looked at her directly. This is my chance to make that right, not just for you, for Michael Kincaid, for every asset Langley betrayed. This is about honor, Elena, something Langley forgot a long time ago. Elena nodded slowly. She understood honor. She understood debt. She understood that some things had to be finished, no matter the cost. I will call when I have something. She got out of the truck and walked the 2 blocks to her apartment, moving carefully because the wound in her side was starting to ache now that the adrenaline had fully worn off. She climbed the stairs to her 3rd-floor studio, unlocked the door, and stepped into the small space that had been her refuge for 2 years. It felt different now, smaller, like a cage she had been hiding in rather than a home. Elena showered, changed the bandage on her wound, and put on clean clothes. Then she lay down on her bed and stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying the past 8 hours, Caldwell's moment of recognition. Ashford's sudden appearance, the weight of a mission she had thought was over. She should have been exhausted. Instead, she felt awake, alert, alive in a way she had not felt since Prague. At 11 in the morning, her apartment buzzer rang. Elena checked the peephole. 2 people in suits, federal agents. She had expected this. She opened the door. Elena Graves. The woman was early 40s, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, FBI credentials already out. I am Special Agent Patricia Hammond. This is my partner, Special Agent Robert Chen. We would like to ask you some questions about last night's incident at Anchor's End. Elena stepped back, letting them enter. Of course, though I am not sure how much help I can be. It all happened so fast. They sat in her small living area, Hammond on the single chair, Chen standing by the door, classic interview positioning. Elena sat on her bed, keeping her posture open, non-defensive. You work at Anchor's End as a bartender, is that correct? Yes, 2 years. Last night you physically subdued 2 men, one of whom was armed. Can you explain how a bartender managed that? Elena had rehearsed this. I took self-defense classes. After I was assaulted 3 years ago, I did not want to feel helpless again. She made her voice smaller, vulnerable. When I saw the gun, I just reacted. I did not think. Hammond's expression softened slightly. I understand. That must have been frightening. Can you describe what happened before the physical altercation? For the next 40 minutes, Elena gave them the carefully edited version. She had been serving drinks. 2 men in the corner booth had been talking quietly. Dalton Kane and his friends had been rowdy. She had heard raised voices, seen movement, thrown a bottle to break up what she thought was a fight. It was plausible? Barely. Hammond clearly had doubts, her questions probing for inconsistencies. But Chen seemed more sympathetic, perhaps seeing Elena as a victim who got lucky. Commander Caldwell claims you stole classified documents from him during the altercation, Hammond said. A map. Do you have it? Elena met her eyes directly. I do not know what he is talking about. I saw a piece of paper fall. Maybe it got swept up when the police came. I was pretty shaken up. Hammond studied her for a long moment. Elena kept her breathing steady, her expression confused but cooperative. Finally, Hammond stood. We will need you to come to the field office later this week for a formal statement. Do not leave the area. Of course. Hammond paused at the door. For your information, the second man you subdued has been identified as Viktor Sokolov, Russian GRU operative. He had diplomatic cover at their embassy in D.C. This is now an international incident. She looked at Elena with something that might have been respect. You stopped something very serious last night, Miss Graves, whether you realize it or not. After they left, Elena waited 30 minutes, then left her apartment and walked to a library 6 blocks away. She used a public computer to search for news about last night. Local news had picked up the story. Naval officer arrested in Virginia Beach, bar altercation. No details about espionage. No mention of Russian intelligence. The FBI was keeping it quiet. Good. That meant the investigation was ongoing. That meant Langley did not know yet how much evidence the FBI had recovered. Elena returned to her apartment and waited. She cleaned. She organized her sparse belongings. She did not allow herself to think about Michael Kincaid or Prague, or the fact that she was about to step back into a world that had nearly destroyed her. At 6 in the evening, her work phone rang. It was Deb, the other bartender. Elena? Thank God. Are you okay? The news said you were questioned by the FBI. What the hell happened? I am fine, Deb. Just some guys fighting, wrong place, wrong time. Well, listen, the bar is closed for a few days while the police finish their investigation. But the owner wants you back as soon as we reopen. He says you are a hero. Elena almost laughed at that. Hero, if only Deb knew. Thanks, I will be there. She hung up and stared at Ashford's phone. 3 days until Anchor's End reopened. 3 days for Langley to make his move. 3 days to prepare for whatever came next. Elena went to her closet and pulled out a box she had not opened in 2 years. Inside were the only possessions from her old life she had kept. Michael Kincaid's challenge coin from his SEAL team. A photograph of them together in Prague, both smiling, both believing they were invincible. And a small notebook where she had recorded everything she remembered about the night he died. She also pulled out the map she had taken from Caldwell's jacket. She had slipped it to Ashford during the drive to his house, a smooth handoff in the truck that the FBI would never know about. He had photographed it, documented it, and returned it to her for safekeeping. Evidence outside official channels. Insurance in case Langley's network tried to bury the investigation. She opened the notebook. Read her own handwriting. The details she had documented with ghost listener precision. The warehouse. The ambush. The men who had killed him. And at the bottom of the last page, a single sentence she had written in the hospital while recovering from her gunshot wound. Someone will answer for this. Elena closed the notebook. She looked at herself in the small mirror, hanging on her bathroom door. Gray eyes, tired face, the face of a woman who had tried to disappear and failed. "All right," she said quietly. "Let us finish this." 3 days passed like a held breath. Elena returned to Anchor's End on a cold Monday evening in late December, the sky already dark at 6 o'clock, the wind coming off the Atlantic with enough bite to make her pull her jacket tighter as she walked from the bus stop. The bar looked the same from the outside, same peeling paint, same neon sign flickering uncertainly, same smell of stale beer and cigarette smoke seeping through the walls. But everything had changed. The owner, a man named Rick Donovan, who spent more time at his beach house than managing his business, met her at the door with an expression somewhere between gratitude and fear. He was 62 years old, overweight, wearing a golf shirt that had been expensive once but now showed its age. "Elena, Jesus, you all right? The FBI was here for 2 days going through everything. They took security footage, receipts, everything." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Look, I do not know what those guys were doing in my bar, and I do not want to know. But you stopped something, Pen. The cops said so, thank you." Elena nodded, said nothing, let him fill the silence. "Anyway, we are opening back up tonight. Light crowd probably. People are nervous, but Deb is already here setting up, and I figured you would want your regular shift. Unless you need more time off, I would understand." "I am fine," Elena said. "I need to work." What she meant was, I need to be here when Langley makes his move. But Rick heard what he wanted to hear, which was that she needed the money, which was also true. She pushed through the door into the familiar dim interior. Deb was behind the bar restocking bottles, and when she saw Elena, she rushed over and pulled her into a fierce hug that Elena tolerated for exactly 3 seconds before gently extracting herself. "Girl, you are insane," Deb said, holding Elena at arm's length, studying her face. "I have been working bars for 30 years, and I have never seen anything like what you did. Where did you learn to fight like that?" "Self-defense classes." Elena repeated the lie she had told the FBI. "After I was attacked a few years ago." "Well, whoever taught you, they did a hell of a job." Deb released her, move back behind the bar. "Fair warning, though, word got around. You are going to have people asking questions all night. And some of those Navy guys want to talk to you." Elena's pulse quickened slightly. "Which Navy guys?" "The ones who were here that night, the SEALs. The loud one, Dalton Kane, he has been coming by every day asking when you would be back." Elena tied on her apron, began her pre-shift routine of checking inventory and wiping down the bar top. Her movements were automatic muscle memory, but her mind was racing through possibilities. Dalton Kane wanting to talk could mean several things: apology, questions, suspicion, or something else entirely. The first customers trickled in around 7. Construction workers, off-duty shipyard employees, a few regulars who treated Anchor's End like a second living room. They all looked at Elena differently now, some with respect, some with curiosity, some with the kind of wariness people reserve for things they did not quite understand. At 7:45, Dalton Kane walked through the door. He was alone this time. No teammates, no backup. He wore jeans and a plain gray t-shirt that showed the full sleeve of tattoos on both arms. He looked sober, which was unusual for him at this hour. He looked uncomfortable, which was even more unusual. He sat at the bar, waited until Elena approached. "Bourbon?" she asked, her voice neutral. "Water," he said. "I am not drinking tonight. I need to talk to you, if that is okay." Elena poured him water, set the glass in front of him, and waited. She kept her expression blank, gave him nothing. Dalton stared at his water glass for a long moment. Then he said, "I owe you an apology, a big one. For 3 weeks I've been coming here getting drunk and treating you like garbage, calling you names, grabbing you, being a complete asshole." He looked up, met her eyes. "And then you saved my life. You saved all our lives. Because that guy Caldwell, the FBI, told us he was selling intelligence that would have gotten SEALs killed. Maybe me, maybe my team. And you stopped him." Elena said nothing. She was reading his micro-expressions, analyzing his body language. Genuine shame, genuine gratitude. No deception that she could detect. I do not have an excuse, Dalton continued. My team lost 2 guys in Syria. Good men, friends, and I have been angry ever since, taking it out on anyone who seemed like an easy target, which is not an excuse, it is what I was doing. And you deserved better. You deserve better. He pushed a piece of paper across the bar. Elena looked down. It was a check, made out to her, for $5,000. I talked to my team. We pooled money. It is not enough. There is no amount that makes up for how we treated you. But it is something, and if you need anything, anything at all, you call me. He pulled out a card with his phone number written on it. I am serious. You need help. You need protection. You need someone to vouch for you, whatever. I owe you. Elena looked at the check, at the card, at Dalton Kane's face, which showed more vulnerability than she had ever seen from him. She could reject it. She could tell him to go to hell. Part of her wanted to, but another part, the operational part, recognized an opportunity. I accept your apology, she said quietly, and I will keep the number. But I do not need the money. She pushed the check back across the bar. Dalton blinked. What? No, listen, you should take it. You earned it. I did not do what I did for money. I did it because it was right. Elena held his gaze. If you want to make things right, do better. Be better. That is worth more than $5,000. Dalton stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, folded the check, and put it back in his pocket. Okay? Yeah, okay. He started to leave, then turned back. For what it is worth, I told the FBI that you are the real deal. Whatever happens with their investigation, they know you stopped a traitor. They know you are on the right side. After he left, Deb came over, eyes wide. What was that about? Nothing, Elena said. Just apologizing. But it was not nothing. Dalton Kane's endorsement meant the FBI would be less suspicious of her. It meant she had more time before they started digging into her background. And more importantly, it meant she now had a SEAL operator who owed her a debt. Assets were valuable in operational planning. Elena filed this one away. The night continued. More customers, more questions. Elena deflected them all with the same story, the same humble shrug, the same insistence that she had just reacted without thinking. By 10 o'clock, the initial curiosity had faded and the bar had settled into its normal rhythm. Elena was wiping down glasses when Ashford's phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at it under the bar. A text message, just 2 words. Contact made. Elena's heart rate spiked. She looked around the bar. 15 customers. Deb at the other end of the counter. Rick in his office doing paperwork. No immediate threats. But somewhere Thomas Langley had just made a move. She waited until her break at 11, then stepped into the alley behind Anchor's End and called Ashford. What happened? She asked without preamble. Caldwell had a visitor at the Federal Detention Center this morning. His lawyer officially. But the lawyer is a woman named Patricia Vance, and she works for a firm that has represented Russian intelligence assets in 3 previous cases. She spent 40 minutes with Caldwell. No recording, attorney-client privilege. Langley sent a message. Almost certainly. I have been monitoring Caldwell's phone records. Before his arrest, he made 17 calls in the past month. 15 were to his wife and children. 1 was to his office. And 1 was to a burner phone that pinged off a cell tower in McLean, Virginia, Langley's area. Yes, that call happened 3 days before his meeting with Viktor Sokolov at Anchor's End. My assessment is that Langley was coordinating the handoff. Elena leaned against the cold brick wall of the alley processing. If Vance delivered a message from Langley, it was either a promise to get him out or a threat to keep him quiet. Maybe both. Agreed, Arya. But here is the interesting part. 2 hours after Vance left the detention center, someone withdrew $50,000 in cash from a bank account in the Cayman Islands. The account is owned by a shell corporation, but I traced it back through 3 layers. It connects to Langley. He is paying someone who... That is the question. My guess. He is either funding Caldwell's defense or paying for an extraction. Or, Ashford paused. He is paying someone to eliminate Caldwell before he talks. Elena felt cold. That had nothing to do with the December air. We need to move faster. If Caldwell dies, the trail ends. I agree, but we still need direct evidence tying Langley to the network. Everything I have is circumstantial. A good lawyer would tear it apart. Then we need to force Langley into the open. Make him panic, make him sloppy. How? Elena thought for a moment, staring up at the narrow strip of sky visible between the buildings. Caldwell is not the only asset in Langley's network. You said there were two others, a Special Forces colonel and a DIA contractor. If Langley thinks one of them might flip, he will have to make contact. And when he does, I can listen. You want to spook one of his other assets. I want to apply pressure, see where the cracks appear. Ashford was quiet for a long moment. That is dangerous, Elena. If you push too hard, Langley will realize someone is hunting him. He will go dark, or worse, he will come after you directly. At least then I will be ready. She could hear Ashford's skepticism through the phone. You are one person. Langley has resources. He has contacts. He has a network built over 4 years. You cannot take that on alone. I am not alone. I have you. And I have something Langley does not have anymore. I have nothing left to lose. Another pause. Then Ashford said, there is a memorial service for Michael Kincaid in 3 days. Arlington National Cemetery. His family finally got approval for burial in the military section. You should be there. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She had not known, had not been told. Michael's family blamed her for his death, which was fair because she blamed herself. The CIA had not invited her to anything official because officially she no longer existed. Why are you telling me this? Her voice came out rougher than she intended. Because Michael deserves to have someone there who knew the truth. Who knew he died a hero, not a casualty of a training accident, which is what his family was told. And because you deserve closure. Ashford's voice softened. And because Thomas Langley will be there. He has to be. He was Michael's handler. It would look suspicious if he did not attend. Elena's mind raced. A memorial service. Public. Controlled. Security everywhere. And Langley would be there playing the part of the grieving handler, shaking hands, offering condolences, maintaining his cover. I will be there, she said. Elena, I was not suggesting you approach him. I was just saying you should pay your respects. I know what you were saying, and I am telling you will be there. She hung up before Ashford could argue. She stood in the alley for another minute, breathing the cold air, letting it clear her head. Then she went back inside to finish her shift. The next 2 days passed in careful preparation. Elena researched Arlington National Cemetery's layout. She studied photographs of Thomas Langley, not the official CIA portrait, but candid shots from various functions, learning his mannerisms, his gait, his tells. She planned approach vectors, exit routes, contingencies. On the morning of the service, she dressed in black. Simple dress, dark coat, nothing that would draw attention. She took 2 buses to Arlington, arriving an hour early, and walked the grounds memorizing the terrain. The service was scheduled for 11 o'clock at a graveside in Section 60, where America buried its recent war dead. Elena stood at a distance partially hidden by an oak tree and watched as people arrived. Michael's family, his mother gray-haired and hollow-eyed, his father a retired Army sergeant standing rigid as stone, his younger sister 23 years old crying quietly into a tissue. Elena wanted to go to them, wanted to tell them the truth, wanted to say that Michael had died protecting his country from a traitor, not in some meaningless training accident. But she stayed where she was, because the truth would destroy them even more than the lie. More people arrived, military officers, intelligence personnel in civilian clothes. And then at 10:55, a black sedan pulled up and Thomas Langley stepped out. He looked exactly as Elena remembered, 52 years old, average height, average build, wearing an expensive dark suit and a somber expression that was absolutely perfect for the occasion. He moved through the crowd, shaking hands, offering quiet condolences, playing his role flawlessly. Elena watched him, studied him, saw no cracks in his facade. The service began. A chaplain spoke words about sacrifice and duty. An honor guard fired a 21-gun salute. Taps played across the cold December air. Michael's mother wept. His father saluted the flag-draped coffin. And Thomas Langley stood with his head bowed, looking appropriately grief-stricken, while Elena's rage built with every passing second. When the service ended, people began to disperse. Elena waited. She watched Langley say final words to Michael's family, watched him walk back toward his sedan. And then she stepped out from behind the tree and intercepted him on the path. Agent Langley. He turned, his professional smile already forming, and then froze as he recognized her. For exactly 2 seconds, his mask slipped. Elena saw shock, then calculation, then something that looked almost like fear. But he recovered quickly, the smile returning, wider now, welcoming. Lena Graves, my God, I heard you were in Virginia Beach, but I never expected to see you here. He glanced around, checking who might be watching. No one was close enough to hear. How have you been? I heard about the incident at the bar. Quite impressive work. You killed him, Elena said quietly. You set up the Prague operation. You fed our location to Russian intelligence, and you killed Michael Kincaid to cover your tracks. Langley's expression did not change. That is a serious accusation and completely baseless. The Prague operation failed due to leaked communications from a Czech asset. The investigation was clear. The investigation was a cover-up. I know about Caldwell. I know about your network. I know you have been selling classified intelligence for 4 years. Elena stepped closer, her voice dropping even lower. And I am going to prove it. Now Langley's smile faded completely. He looked at her with eyes that were suddenly cold, calculating, completely devoid of the false warmth from a moment before. You were a good operative, Elena, one of the best ghost listeners I ever trained. But Prague damaged you. Everyone knows that. You have PTSD, paranoia. You see conspiracies where there are none. His voice was gentle, pitying, the tone of someone talking to a confused child. If you start making wild accusations, people will assume you have had a breakdown. They will feel sorry for you, but they will not believe you. I am not the only one investigating you. Aren't you? Langley glanced around again, then back to her. If you had real evidence, you would have gone to the authorities already. Instead, you are confronting me at a funeral, making threats you cannot back up. That tells me you have nothing. Elena held his gaze. I have Caldwell. I have his phone records. I have the map he was selling. And I have 47 minutes of recorded conversation between him and a GRU operative. That is not nothing. For the first time, genuine concern flickered across Langley's face. The FBI has that evidence, not you, and it does not connect to me. Not yet, but when Caldwell realizes he is facing life in prison, he will make a deal, and he will give you up. No, Langley said simply, he will not. The certainty in his voice made Elena's blood run cold. She understood immediately. Caldwell was not going to testify, because Caldwell was not going to survive long enough to testify. Marmon, you are going to have him killed. Langley said nothing. He did not need to. His silence was confirmation enough. That will not stop this, Elena said. You train me too well. I know how you think. I know how you operate. And I am going to take you down. No, Elena, you are not. Langley's voice was firm now, almost paternal. You are going to go back to your bar. You are going to pull beers and wipe counters and try to rebuild whatever life you can manage. Because if you continue this, if you push this any further, I will have no choice but to treat you as a threat to operational security. And you know what happens to threats. It was not a metaphor. It was a direct threat. Elena understood perfectly. If she did not back off, Langley would have her killed the same way he was going to have Caldwell killed, the same way he had killed Michael. She should have been afraid. She should have stepped back, reassessed, found another way. But standing there in Arlington National Cemetery, 10 feet from where Michael Kincaid was being laid to rest, Elena felt something stronger than fear. She felt purpose, clarity, the absolute certainty that some fights were worth dying for. You made a mistake, she said quietly, when you betrayed me in Prague, when you had Michael killed. You thought you were eliminating a problem. But what you actually did was create someone with nothing left to lose. Someone who knows all your techniques because you taught them to her. Someone who is not afraid of you anymore. She leaned in close enough that only he could hear her next words. I am a ghost, Thomas. I am invisible. I am patient, and I am coming for you. She walked away before he could respond, her heart pounding, adrenaline flooding her system. That had been reckless, dangerous, possibly stupid. She had revealed her hand, given Langley warning, and painted a target on her own back. But she had also accomplished something important. She had rattled him. She had forced him to react. And people made mistakes when they were rattled. Elena made it to the cemetery entrance before Ashford's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, saw a message. You just made a scene with Langley. Multiple witnesses. What the hell were you thinking? She looked around, spotted Ashford's truck parked across the street. She crossed over, got in the passenger seat. I was thinking that I needed to see his reaction. I needed to confirm he was planning to eliminate Caldwell, and I needed to make him panic. Congratulations. You succeeded, and now he knows you are hunting him. Ashford's voice was tight with controlled anger. That was not part of the plan. The plan was not working. He has too much protection, too many layers. The only way to get to him is to force him into making a move he has not prepared for, or force him into eliminating you first. Then we need to work faster. Ashford started the truck, pulled into traffic. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Then he said, there may be a way, high risk, possibly suicidal, but it might work. Tell me. Langley's second asset, the one at Defense Intelligence. His name is Robert Millerson, civilian contractor, access to satellite imagery and signals intelligence. He has been feeding Langley classified data for 3 years. I have been watching him for 6 months building a profile. Ashford handed Elena a folder. She opened it, saw surveillance photos, financial records, behavioral analysis. Millerson has a weakness, Ashford continued. His daughter, 16 years old, good student, plays soccer, wants to go to Georgetown. He is paying for her private school education with the money he makes from Langley. He is convinced he is doing it for her future. Elena saw where this was going. You want me to approach him, make him think his daughter is in danger. I want you to make him choose his loyalty to Langley versus his daughter's safety. If he thinks Langley's network is collapsing, if he thinks his daughter will find out what he has done, he might flip. He might give us what we need. That is psychological warfare against a civilian. That is what ghost listeners do, Ashford said flatly. You find the pressure point and you apply leverage. I am not asking you to hurt his daughter. I am asking you to make him believe his choices have consequences. Elena stared at the file. She had done this before, in Prague, in training. She had manipulated assets, exploited weaknesses, done whatever the mission required. But that was before she understood how people like Langley abuse that same skill set for profit. If I do this, she said slowly, Millerson's life is destroyed. Even if he cooperates, even if he gets immunity, his family will know what he did. His daughter will know. That is a permanent wound. Yes, just like Michael Kincaid's death was a permanent wound. Just like every soldier who died because of intelligence Langley sold was a permanent wound. Ashford's voice was harsh. You want to take down a traitor, this is what it costs. Not just you, not just him, everyone. Elena closed the file. She thought about Michael, about the SEALs Caldwell's intelligence would have killed, about every asset in Langley's network who would keep selling American lives if someone did not stop them. Where does Millerson live? Bethesda. He drives his daughter to school every morning at 7:30, soccer practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4:15. He works from home 3 days a week. I need 48 hours to prepare. You have 24. Caldwell's bail hearing is tomorrow. If Langley is going to eliminate him, it happens in the next 36 hours. We are out of time. Elena nodded. 24 hours. She could work with that. That night, she did not go back to Anchor's End. She called in sick, which Deb accepted without question, because Elena never called in sick, so it must be serious. Instead, she went to a 24-hour diner in Arlington and spent 8 hours reviewing Millerson's file, building her approach, preparing her leverage. At 3 in the morning, she walked to Michael Kincaid's grave. Someone had left flowers. Someone who cared. Elena knelt in the cold grass and placed her hand on the marble headstone. I am sorry I got you killed, she whispered. I am sorry I trusted the wrong people. But I am going to make this right. I promise you that. The next morning, Elena stood outside Robert Millerson's daughter's private school at 7:45. She watched the girl get out of her father's BMW, laughing about something her soccer bag slung over her shoulder. Happy, innocent, unaware that her father was a traitor. Elena followed Millerson as he drove to his office, a converted townhouse in downtown Bethesda that housed a defense contracting firm. She watched him enter, carrying his coffee and laptop bag. A man with a routine. A man who believed he was safe. At 9 o'clock, Elena walked into a FedEx office 3 blocks away. She printed a single photograph that Ashford had provided showing Millerson meeting with Thomas Langley in a parking garage. She printed a second document, a bank statement showing deposits to Millerson's offshore account that correlated with dates of known intelligence breaches. She put both items in a manila envelope. On the outside, she wrote in block letters, "Your daughter will know what you are." Then she walked to Millerson's office and left the envelope with the receptionist addressed to Robert Millerson marked personal and confidential. Elena walked 3 blocks away and waited in a coffee shop with a clear view of the building entrance. Ashford was parked nearby monitoring Millerson's phone, ready to intercept any communications. At 9:47, Millerson burst out of the building. He was on his phone, his face pale, his movements jerky with panic. Elena could not hear what he was saying, but his body language screamed terror. Ashford's phone buzzed with a text. He just called Langley, panicking, saying someone knows, saying he needs to meet. Elena felt cold satisfaction. The trap was working. 2 hours later, Elena followed Millerson to a park in Silver Spring. He sat on a bench, looking around nervously. 10 minutes later, a man approached, not Thomas Langley. Someone Elena did not recognize. Younger, dressed in casual clothes. Likely a cutout, a go-between to maintain Langley's distance. Elena could not get close enough to hear the conversation. But she could watch. She could see Millerson's agitation, the cutout's cold efficiency, and when Millerson handed over his phone, likely to be checked for tracking software, Elena knew they had taken the bait. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. Then Millerson drove away and the cutout walked to a parking garage. Elena followed the cutout. She moved carefully, maintaining distance, using crowds for cover. The man drove to a restaurant in Georgetown. He went inside, sat at a table, and ordered coffee. 20 minutes later, Thomas Langley walked in. Elena's pulse spiked. She was across the street, hidden in the doorway of a closed bookstore. She had a direct line of sight through the restaurant window. She pulled out a camera, a small digital model Ashford had given her, and started taking photographs. Langley and the cutout talked for 17 minutes. Elena could not hear them, could not read lips from this distance through window glass. But she did not need to. The photographs would show Thomas Langley meeting with an asset in his network on the same day that asset received a threat about exposure. It was not conclusive proof, but it was evidence, real evidence, the kind that could not be explained away as coincidence. After Langley left, Elena waited 10 minutes, then followed the cutout again. He drove to a storage facility in Alexandria. He opened a unit. He spent 40 minutes inside doing something Elena could not see. She called Ashford. "I need surveillance on a storage unit. I think they are moving evidence, preparing to go dark." "I am on it." "Where are you, Bum?" "Following the cutout. I need to know where he goes next." The cutout drove to a house in McLean. Expensive neighborhood. Large properties. The house had no visible security, but that meant nothing. Elena parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot, moving through yards using trees and fences for cover. She reached a position where she could see the house. She set up Ashford's camera with a telephoto lens, and she waited. At 7:15 that evening, Robert Millerson arrived at the house. He looked terrified. He rang the doorbell. Someone let him in. Elena kept the camera rolling. Millerson was inside for 48 minutes. When he came out, he was crying. Elena's phone buzzed. Ashford. Millerson just called his wife, told her he loved her, told her to take their daughter to her mother's house tonight. Do not ask questions. Just go. That is the language of a man who thinks he is going to die. Elena lowered the camera. Langley is cleaning house. He is not just going to kill Caldwell. He is going to kill everyone who knows about the network. Including you. Including me, Elena agreed, which means we need to move now, tonight, before he has time to prepare. What are you proposing? Elena looked at the house, at the windows glowing with warm light, at the expensive cars in the driveway. I am proposing we stop playing by Langley's rules. We have photographs, we have surveillance. We have Millerson as a witness if we can get to him first. We take everything we have to the FBI, to the media if we have to. We burn Langley's network to the ground before he can burn us. That will expose you, your cover, your identity, everything. I know. Elena, if you do this, you can never go back to being invisible. You will be public, vulnerable. Every enemy you made will know exactly where to find you. I know, Elena said again, but I am tired of hiding. I am tired of being afraid. And I am tired of watching men like Thomas Langley destroy lives for profit while the system protects them. Ashford was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "All right, if we are doing this, we do it right. Meet me at my house in 1 hour. We need to put together a package that cannot be ignored." Elena drove back to Arlington, moving through late-night traffic, her mind cataloging every piece of evidence they had, every weakness in their case, every way this could go wrong. When she arrived at Ashford's house, she found him in his kitchen, surrounded by documents, photographs, and 3 laptop computers, displaying data analysis. "I have been working since your call," he said without looking up. "Financial records connecting Langley to shell accounts. Communication logs showing contact with known foreign intelligence operatives. Testimonial evidence from 3 former CIA officers who suspected Langley but were silenced. And your photographs from today." He looked up at her. "This is everything. Every piece of evidence I have collected in 18 months. If we release this, there is no taking it back." "Then let us make sure it counts." They worked through the night, building a case, cross-referencing documents, preparing statements. At 4 in the morning, they had a complete evidence package that would destroy Thomas Langley's career, dismantle his network, and likely send him to federal prison for the rest of his life. At 4:30, Ashford's phone rang. He looked at the number, then at Elena. "It is Agent Hammond, the FBI. She does not call unless it is urgent." He answered on speaker. "This is Ashford. Colonel, I need to speak with Elena Graves immediately. It is about Commander Caldwell." "I am here," Elena said. "Miss Graves, I am calling to inform you that Commander Marcus Caldwell was found dead in his cell 2 hours ago. Apparent suicide. He hanged himself using a bedsheet." Hammond's voice was tight with controlled anger. "But I do not believe it was suicide. I believe he was murdered. And I believe it is connected to what you saw in that bar." Elena felt ice spread through her chest. Who had access to his cell? "That is what I am trying to determine. But I need your help. I need everything you know about what happened in that night. Everything you saw, everything you heard. No more partial stories. The truth." Elena looked at Ashford. He nodded. "I will tell you everything," Elena said, "but not over the phone and not at FBI headquarters. Somewhere public. Somewhere safe. Why are you in danger? Yes, and so are you if you keep investigating this. The person behind Caldwell is Thomas Langley, CIA Directorate of Operations. He has been running an espionage network for 4 years. He had Caldwell killed, and he will kill anyone who gets close to proving it." Silence on the other end of the line. Then Hammond said, "That is an extraordinary allegation. I have extraordinary evidence. Meet me at the Lincoln Memorial in 1 hour. Bring backup. Bring your supervising agent. And bring a very large evidence bag because you are going to need it." Elena hung up. She looked at Ashford. "This is it. Once I hand this over, everything changes." "Elena, are you sure? Once the FBI has this, you lose control. This becomes their investigation. Their case. You become a witness, not an operator." "Good. I do not want to be an operator anymore. I want Thomas Langley in prison. I want Michael's death avenged. And I want to sleep at night without dreaming about Prague." She picked up the evidence package they had spent the night preparing. "Let us finish this." The Lincoln Memorial at dawn was cold and nearly empty. Elena stood at the base of the steps, the evidence package in a waterproof bag, and watched as 2 FBI vehicles pulled up. Agent Hammond got out along with a man Elena recognized from news coverage as the FBI Deputy Director for National Security. They were taking this seriously. Good. Hammond approached slowly, her hand near her weapon, her eyes scanning for threats. "Miss Graves?" "Agent Hammond, thank you for coming. Before we go any further, I need to know. Are you armed?" "No." "Are you here alone?" "Colonel Garrett Ashford is providing overwatch from a vehicle approximately 200 yards away. He is retired Marine intelligence. He has been investigating Thomas Langley independently for 18 months. He is not a threat." Hammond nodded to her partner, who spoke into his radio. Then she looked back at Elena. "All right, you said you have evidence." Elena handed her the waterproof bag. "Everything is in there: financial records, communication logs, surveillance photographs from yesterday showing Langley meeting with another asset in his network, testimonial statements, and the full story of what happened in Prague 2 years ago when Langley betrayed a classified operation and got my partner killed. Hammond opened the bag, looked inside, her expression hardening as she saw the volume of documentation. This will take days to process. You have days, but Robert Millerson does not. He is the defense intelligence contractor who has been feeding Langley classified satellite data. Yesterday, I sent him a message that his activities were discovered. Last night, he met with Langley. This morning, he called his wife and told her to take their daughter and hide. He thinks Langley is going to kill him. Where is Millerson now? I do not know, but I know where he lives. And I know Langley will make a move soon, probably today. The deputy director stepped forward. Miss Graves, if what you are saying is true, this is one of the most serious counterintelligence breaches in 20 years. We will need you to make an official statement. We will need you to testify. I will do whatever you need, but you need to move fast. Langley is cleaning house. Caldwell is dead. Millerson is next. And I am probably on his list too. Hammond pulled out her phone, made a call. I need a protective detail at this location. Subject is a witness in a counterintelligence case. Highest priority. She hung up. Miss Graves, we are going to take you into protective custody for your own safety. No, I have spent 2 years hiding. I am done with that. I will cooperate. I will testify. But I am not going into custody. Elena, Ashford's voice came through the earpiece Elena was wearing, connected to the phone in her pocket. Accept the protection. This is not the time for pride. She almost smiled. He was right, as usual. Fine, protective custody, but I want updates. I want to know when you arrest Langley. I want to see this finished. You will, Hammond said. I promise you that. 3 days later, Elena sat in a FBI safe house in suburban Maryland, watching news coverage on a television that was turned to low volume. The headline read, Senior CIA officer arrested on espionage charges. Thomas Langley had been taken into custody that morning. The FBI had moved simultaneously on 4 locations, arresting Langley and 2 other assets in his network. Robert Millerson had been found safe, taken into protective custody, and was cooperating with investigators. The evidence Elena and Ashford had compiled was already making headlines. Congressional oversight committees were demanding investigations. The CIA director had given a press conference promising full accountability. Elena watched it all with a sense of detachment. It was over. The mission she had started 2 years ago in Prague, the mission that had cost Michael Kincaid his life, was finally complete. Ashford sat across from her, drinking coffee from an FBI-issue mug. You did it, he said quietly. You took down one of the most protected intelligence officers in the CIA. You exposed a network that operated for 4 years without detection. You avenged Michael's death. We did it, Elena corrected. I could not have done this without you. Maybe, but you were the one who walked into that bar and saw what no one else saw. You were the one who had the courage to act. That was all you. Elena looked down at her hands. They were steady. For the first time in 2 years, she was not shaking, not afraid, not looking over her shoulder. What happens now, she asked. Now you testify. The trial will take months, maybe years. Langley has good lawyers, but with the evidence we have, with Millerson's testimony, he does not have a defense. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. And after that, Ashford smiled, after that you get to decide who Elena Graves becomes. For the first time in your life, you have a choice. You are not an asset. You are not a ghost listener. You are just a woman who did something incredibly brave and has the rest of her life ahead of her. 6 weeks after Thomas Langley's arrest, Elena stood in the visitors section at Arlington National Cemetery. Michael Kincaid's grave had a new marker now, one that told the truth. His dates of service, his rank, his commendation for classified operations in support of national security. Someone had left flowers again. Elena added her own white lilies that Michael had once told her reminded him of spring in North Carolina where he grew up. I did it, she said quietly to the gravestone. I finished the mission. You can rest now. She heard footsteps behind her, turned. Dalton Kane was walking up the path wearing his dress uniform, looking uncomfortable and uncertain. I hope I am not intruding, he said. Agent Hammond told me you would be here. I wanted to tell you something. Elena waited. Michael was a friend. We served together 3 years ago. When I heard the truth about how he really died, about what you did to bring down the people responsible, he paused. He would be proud of you, and I'm grateful I got to see real strength in action. Not the loud kind, The kind that matters. Elena almost smiled. You were an asshole to everyone. Yeah, I was. I'm working on that. Dalton pulled out a card. I know you are done with intelligence work, but if you ever need anything, if you ever want someone to watch your back, my offer stands. No questions asked. Elena took the card. Thank you. That means something. After Dalton left, Elena stood alone for a few more minutes. Then she walked back through Arlington to the entrance where Ashford was waiting in his truck. Ready, he asked. Ready. They drove to a small office building in Alexandria. Elena had signed the lease 2 weeks ago using money from a victim compensation fund the CIA had provided as part of their settlement for her unlawful termination. The office was small, 2 rooms, but it had a good view and enough space for what she planned. The sign on the door read, Tidewater Security Consulting. Inside, 3 desks were set up, one for Elena, one for Ashford, who had agreed to come out of retirement to help her build the business, and one for their first employee, a former analyst Ashford had recruited who specialized in financial intelligence. It is not much, Elena said, looking around the empty office, but it is ours. It is a start, Ashford agreed, and sometimes a start is all you need. Elena moved to the window, looked out at the street below. Ordinary people doing ordinary things, going to work, getting coffee, living lives that were not built on secrets and lies and betrayal. She had spent 9 years invisible, a ghost, moving through the world without leaving a trace. But standing here now in this office that belonged to her, doing work that she chose, Elena Graves, felt more real than she had ever felt in her life. 2 weeks into running Tidewater Security Consulting, Elena received an email that made her blood run cold. The address was unfamiliar, but the subject line stopped her hand over the delete button. You don't know me, but Agent Langley recruited me. Elena stared at the screen. Then she opened it. My name is Claire Brennan. I'm 22 years old. 6 months ago, Thomas Langley approached me at my university. He said I had exceptional potential for a classified program that could let me serve my country in ways most people never could. I was honored, excited. I signed preliminary paperwork. Then I saw the news about his arrest, about the espionage charges, about everything he did. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to trust anymore. But I saw your name in all the articles. You're the one who stopped him. Maybe you can help me understand what I almost became, what he almost made me into. Elena read the email 3 times. She saw herself at 17 in every word, sitting in that group home, desperate for purpose, vulnerable to predators who dressed up exploitation as patriotism. She hit reply and typed, Claire, come to my office tomorrow at 2 p.m., 1247 King Street, Alexandria. You have a choice I didn't have. Let me help you make the right one. When Claire Brennan walked through the door the next afternoon, Elena saw exactly what she expected. A young woman with intelligent eyes and slouched shoulders carrying the weight of a decision she hadn't yet made. Anglo-Saxon features, probably from a difficult background. Exactly the profile Langley hunted. Thank you for seeing me, Claire said quietly, sitting across from Elena's desk. I didn't know where else to go. He told you that you could be useful, Elena said. It was not a question. Claire nodded. He said I could serve my country, make a real difference, that most people go through life never knowing what they're capable of, but I could be part of something important. You can, Elena replied, but on your terms, not his, not a system that treats people like disposable assets. She slid a business card across the desk. I'm building something different here, something clean. We investigate corruption, we expose threats, we protect people who need help, but we do it in the light, not in shadows, not through manipulation. Claire picked up the card, studied the Tidewater Security logo. He showed me files, tests I'd taken, psychological profiles. He knew things about me I'd never told anyone. That's how predators work. They make you feel seen, special, chosen. Elena's voice was firm but not unkind. What Langley offered you was poison wrapped in patriotism. A chance to use your skills, yes, but for his profit, for his network. You would have ended up like Commander Caldwell, like the others, or like me, burned, betrayed, and thrown away when you became inconvenient. But you came back from it, Claire said. You stopped him. I did. But it cost me 6 years of my life, my partner's life, and 2 years of PTSD that I'm still working through. Elena leaned forward. You can use your skills for good, Claire. Real good. Not the kind that comes with lies and cover-ups. I can show you how, but no secrets, no ghosts, no becoming invisible. You stay yourself, you stay in the light, and you help people who actually need it. Claire was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of the business card. Finally, she looked up. When do I start? Elena smiled, a real smile, maybe the first genuine one since Prague. Monday, 9 a.m. And Claire, yes. Welcome to the real fight, the one that actually matters. After Claire left, Elena stood at the window and watched her walk down King Street, shoulders a little straighter now, purpose in her step. One life salvaged from Langley's wreckage. One young woman who would not become a ghost. It was a start. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She opened it cautiously. I heard what you did, taking down Langley. That took guts. If you ever want to grab coffee and trade war stories, let me know. Dalton, Elena smiled. She typed back black no sugar. She set the phone down and turned back to Ashford. We should get to work. We have clients to find. We have one already, Ashford said. He handed her a folder. A Marine Corps veteran in North Carolina thinks his former commanding officer is selling equipment to drug cartels, wants someone to investigate quietly. Elena opened the folder, began reading. Analysis, pattern recognition, finding truth in the shadows. It was what she had been trained to do, what she was good at. But this time she was doing it on her terms, for people who needed help, not for a system that had betrayed her. All right, she said, let us see what we can find. 3 months after Thomas Langley's arrest, Elena received a letter from the Department of Justice. His trial date had been set. She would be required to testify. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Elena spent 3 days on the witness stand walking the jury through Prague, through the burn, through every detail of Caldwell's treachery and Langley's network. Defense attorneys tried to paint her as unstable paranoid, a damaged operative with an axe to grind. But the evidence was overwhelming. Ashford's 18 months of documentation, Millerson's testimony, financial records that traced every transaction, surveillance photographs showing Langley meeting his assets, the CIA's own internal investigation that had been suppressed until Elena forced it into the light. On a cold morning in March, 6 months after his arrest, Elena sat in the federal courtroom as the jury foreman stood. On the count of espionage, how do you find guilty? On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the count of treason, Rome, guilty. All 18 counts, guilty on every single one. The judge's voice was flat, emotionless as he pronounced sentence. Life in federal prison without possibility of parole. You will be remanded immediately to ADX Florence, the Supermax facility in Colorado, 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. No contact with other prisoners. No possibility of escape. No possibility of running another network. No possibility of hurting anyone ever again. Thomas Langley stood motionless as marshals approached with chains. He turned as they secured his wrists, his eyes finding Elena's across the courtroom one final time. No words, no threats, no smug confidence. Just the hollow look of a man who had finally run out of moves. Elena did not smile, did not feel triumph, just a quiet sense of completion, a weight lifting. Michael could rest now. The SEALs whose lives Caldwell would have sold were safe. The system had worked finally because she had forced it to. As Langley was led away, Ashford placed a hand on her shoulder. It's over. Yes, Elena said, it's over. But her work, the real work, the work that mattered was just beginning. Elena Graves had been invisible for 9 years. A ghost, a listener, a shadow moving through other people's secrets. Now she was something else, something better. She was herself, finally, completely honestly herself. And that was enough.